Hello there. Welcome back to the booth here at Pro Tour Amonkhet. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe here with Luis Scott Vargas, and we are happy to bring you coverage of our quarterfinals. We've got the second half of our quarterfinals lined up for you. We're going to be starting off with Ken Yukihiro versus Erik Froelich. We've also got Gerry Thompson and Marc Tobiasch in the feature match area. But like I said, we're starting off with two heavy hitters now, 8 Pro Tour top 8s between the two. That's Ken Yukihiro versus Erik Froelich right now. Hello and welcome to coverage of Pro Tour Amonkhet. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Luis Scott Vargas, and it is time for our second quarterfinal match. Now this is broken up into 2 sets here. You see we've got 2 different feature matches. We're going to be starting off though with Ken Yukihiro from Japan playing for Team Musashi on black-green energy, appearing in Ken's 3rd Pro Tour top 8. Pretty impressive stuff. Until you look at the other side of the table, Erik Froelich in his 5th Pro Tour top 8 for Team Channel Fireball Ice. He's on Teamer, Aetherworks, Marvel. We're going to be playing a best 3 out of 5 here, Luis. Teamer, Aetherworks versus the lone rogue deck in the top 8 here, black-green energy. What are you seeing?
So Ken is the only aggressive deck in the top 8 that is not, headlined by zombies and more zombies. And he's playing a deck very similar to what Martin used a top-8 Pro Tour Aether Revolt with, which is harnessing the power of a Long Tusk Cub, various cards that make energy, and Winding Constrictor in order to get more +1/+1 counters, more energy. Actually works with both halves of Long Tusk Cub quite well. Walking Ballista, and Rishkar Pima Renegade.
Also of note here, from a team's perspective, these 2 teams are 2 of the more stacked teams in our team competition here at the Pro Tour. Team Musashi and Team Channel Fireball Ice have some really headlining players, and I have to say, Team Musashi, I am blown away. They came in with the lead, and they've put 2 players into the top 8. They are just smashing, Luis.
Yeah, Team Musashi is running away with it right now. We still have another Pro Tour. Pro Tour Hour of Devastation is going to solidify who the final 2 teams are in the playoff, but Team Musashi is well on their way to becoming one of those teams, if not the first place team.
Yeah, might be an hour of devastation for everybody else as we see the early stages develop.
Well, if Pro Tour goes well, it lasts significantly longer than an hour.
Thank you, Luis. Heart of Kirin there for Ken Yukihiro. Saw a fair number of those on day 1 here at the Pro Tour, and then significantly fewer on day 2. Not a lot of Mardu Vehicles decks did particularly well at the tournament, and none in the top 8.
So this is a very interesting play. Ken has incentive right now to use those 2 energy to pump this Long Tusk Cub that he's deploying. If he does that, and Erik Froelich has one of the 2 copies of Magma Spray in his deck in his hand, things go disastrously for Ken.
So Ken decides against it.
He does, which is a disciplined play, because he could have crewed Heart of Kirin if he had pumped Long Tusk Cub, but he would have gotten completely destroyed by the Magma Spray that, in fact, is in Erik's hand. In fact, he has both of them.
Wow.
So heads-up play from Ken there. Not getting greedy definitely paid off.
Managing risk, of course, is something that all great Magic players do very well. And once again, Ken Yukihiro says, you're not going to block, okay, you just take 2 then, meaning I'm going to pass priority. I'm not going to use these 2 energy to put a +1/+1 counter on my Long Tusk Cub. And now it looks like Erik's considering maybe the option of using both?
That is what he's thinking about, whether he wants to expend both of his Magma Sprays. He gets to take out the Long Tusk Cub and force Ken to use those 2 energy, but it's not much better than that, and it still is a 2-for-1 in Ken's favor. So one of the advantages to taking it here is he can still double Magma Spray it before Ken gets more energy.
Right. Ooh, but there's another Long Tusk Cub now for Ken Yukihiro. And a wily start for him. Now Ken's passed the turn back to Erik, who once again is considering his options with these Magma Sprays.
Yeah, it's not good, but it's not getting better. So, and next turn, Erik is going to want to pay 4 for Glimmer of Genius. So if he doesn't Magma Spray Long Tusk Cub now, then they're just going to be in his hand. He's not going to be able to do a whole lot more with it.
So Eric's going to go ahead and target the Long Tusk Cub that's untapped, and he's going to respond by killing it. So he trades off 2 Magma Sprays for 2 energy and a Long Tusk Cub. But like you said, this was more of a mana efficiency play than anything else. He is stemming the bleeding, but he's still facing down a Long Tusk Cub. And Eric's going to go land, go.
And Eric also is going to be attacked by this Heart of Kiran. Ken is now in a position where he's paying full retail for Bone Picker. Not really part of the plan, but certainly works here, and he wants to make that Heart of Kiran into an attacker.
Bone Picker is a spicy one here in the list for Ken Yukihiro. And this is a big hit of damage coming in.
And Ken doing a good job of playing around what's in Eric's deck list by using Long Tusk Cub for additional damage, by pumping it before damage, knowing Eric only has 2 Magma Sprays in his deck list, and he used both of them. So this is the sort of thing that the players really have to keep in mind, is there's no reason not to pump there, but in the Swiss, for example, if you don't know their deck list, maybe you play around the 3rd Magma Spray.
So Eric resolves Glimmer of Genius on on his end step. 2 cards left in hand for Yukihiro. And once again, Froehlich just passes the turn. His life total dwindling down to 11. By the way, I have a a game update from our other match.
Already?
Gerry Thompson has already won game 1 over Marc Tobiasch. He's ran him over with a zombies deck there.
Well, not literally, because he doesn't have any vehicles in them.
It's going to be one of those days for me, isn't it, Louis? He shambled over him.
There we go. That is acceptable.
No blocks from Froehlich, meaning, what do you want to do, Ken? Do you want to use up some energy?
He's gonna go for lethal here.
Is it going to work?
Well, Eric has Harness Lightning in hand, so he's going to be able to take out either Heart of Kiran or Long Tusk Cub, depending on... Well, he could actually take out the Bone Picker, and then that'll leave him at 6 energy, so if he top decks a Marvel, he gets to use it, despite it being the least of the threats.
Yeah, it looks like he's come to the same conclusion you have, Luis. And Ken Yukihiro's hand is a pair of removal spells. That's not going to get the job done against Froehlich here, so... Good news on the horizon for Froehlich. The bad news is his life total is reaching very low amounts. He's down to 3.
He top decked the Marvel.
He ripped the Marvel. Now, he also was setting up for a torrential Gear Hulk play. He had an untapped land and the Gear Hulk. Which one's better?
Well, Gear Hulk wouldn't solve his problem, assuming Ken finds a way to crew Heart of Kiran. Or actually, even without it, because Ken can just crew Heart of Kiran with Long Tusk Cub, attack with 2 flyers, and the Gear Hulk won't save Eric. On the other hand, drawing Marvel gives Eric an out. He has to hit one of his Ulamogs here. He's got 3 remaining in his deck, and we'll see where that ends up landing. But that is going to be his best shot here.
Sometimes a top 8 game comes down to 1 Aetherworks Marvel activation, and that could be the case here for Erik Froelich. A good start from Ken Yukihiro has him backed into a corner and really needing to hit Ulamog off of this 1 spin. And you mentioned it a second ago, that heads-up play by Eric to use the Harness Lightning to keep 1 extra energy. That was the difference. Look at Ken.
He's wondering, how do I play around Ulamog? He's going to come to the conclusion he can't kill Eric through an Ulamog this turn. He can crew Heart of Kiran with this Green Belt Rampager he's drawn, but even if he does, Ulamog takes out the 2 flyers and blocks Long Tusk Cub. So where your decision goes from there is, well, if I can't meaningfully play around Ulamog, what can I play around? Can I play around a torrential Gear Hulk? How do I not beat Eric through, like, let's say, Harness Lightning plus something else off of the Marvel? So Ken may want to present the most damage possible by attacking with all 3 creatures. That does end up worse against Ulamog because your Long Tusk Cub gets blocked by Ulamog.
Does Ken ultimately come to the conclusion on just ignoring? He has to just go for it anyway, right?
It looks like he is, in fact, going to get to the point where he's not particularly concerned about Eric hitting Ulamog, and he's just trying to kill Eric if Eric hits anything but Ulamog. And here we go.
Right, here
Advantage
we go.
bar pending.
This is Ulamog or bust here for Froehlich. Did he hit? No.
He hit
He hit
Whirler
a
Virtuoso, which
Virtuoso.
offers 2 blocks, and Eric does not have a Harness Lightning in hand to deal with a third creature here.
And that is going to do it there. Eric takes a quick peek at that next card and kind of gives an eye roll, but that was game 1 going to Ken Yukihiro, and rather quickly as well. He came out guns blazing and was able to just finish that game. All right, well, we've got more quarterfinal 2 action for you lined up, but first, these messages.
Looking for a challenge? Magic Online offers monthly limited and constructed events, which lead to the yearly Magic Online Championship. Download Magic Online at mtgo.com and start earning the points you need to enter. Amonkhet is now available in Magic Duels. Build endless deck combinations with more than 1,300 unique cards. Play through hours of story with over 60 campaign missions. Play Magic Duels free today on Xbox One, Steam, iPad, and iPhone.
To the feature match here at Pro Tour Amonkhet. We're in Nashville, Tennessee. It's a beautiful day outside, but there are trophies to be won in here. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Luis Scott Vargas, and it looks like we're going to pop over to our other quarterfinal that we're covering here this round. That is Marc Tobiasch from Germany. He's on Teamer Etherworks Marvel. He finds himself very rapidly down a game to this gentleman, Gerry Thompson, on the other side of the table. Playing, you guessed it, Mono Black Zombies. He's playing for Team Mutiny. Mark plays for Eureka. Strong finish here for Team Mutiny. And we're underway. Here, Mark said that guy again.
Well, that is what the zombie deck is trying to start with.
Yeah, hey, it's fair, right? They both had one draw. Yeah, they both agree. Crypt Breaker's a good card.
That it is, though. Mark's hand is very well suited to fight Crypt Breaker. He's got multiple copies of Harness Lightning, and he's got Etherworks Marvel.
Good start for Mark for sure. He's already got 4 energy. Can play that Marvel as early as next turn.
Done it before.
Luis, I was doing Sideline Reporter. That's where I'm down in the feature match area, relaying information back to the booth and to our directors and producers earlier in the weekend. And these two gentlemen played each other. It was the first time they'd played each other, and they had a little bit of downtime, and they were chatting. They seemed to get along quite well.
Yeah, they're both very friendly guys.
Yeah, it was a fun match, too.
So you are doing work when you're on the stage there. I thought you were just watching the matches.
With a headset on. Yes, I am, in fact, doing work. We've got Tim Willoughby covering that role this round.
So Mark missed a land drop this turn.
He did.
A fact that Gerry would be keenly aware of. It might mean that if Gerry had a way to kill that Servant of the Conduit, he would be a lot more active or incentivized to do so.
Well, Mark has something to do with his mana here at the least. He's going to take out the Metallic Mimic and put himself on 6 energy.
Good.
Ether Hub?
Ether Hub would be convenient.
Yeah, that would keep him at the 6 energy he needs. Well, he did find a land.
So Mark can cast Etherworks Marvel, but like you alluded to just a second ago, without an Ether Hub being the land, the Servant of the Conduit will require an energy. So Mark would not be able to spin the Marvel this turn, and that might lead to him not wanting to play it.
Yeah, he's just going to pass the turn back to Gerry. Gerry is 1 zombie short of the amount needed to start drawing extra cards with Crypt Breaker.
Gerry has a powerful hand here. He's got that Relentless that he just played, another Crypt Breaker, and 2 copies of Liliana's Mastery. So
Oaks.
Mark is going to find himself quite far behind if he does not watch out here.
Yeah, you see what he declined here. He decided to play the Harness Lightning this turn, and it's the second one. That is a card he likes to see against this Zombies deck. He's going to fire it off, targeting the Crypt Breaker. That's, of course, with the Relentless Dead still on the stack.
And zombies move very slowly, so you have some time to respond to them.
Those are roughly my options.
Gerry deciding whether he wants to make a zombie with Crypt Breaker's ability here. And part of the reason that Mark targeted Crypt Breaker is it's a 2/2 thanks to the Lord, which means that Harness Lightning will bump him up to 7 energy, which means that even if he uses Servant of the Conduit next turn, he can use Etherworks Marvel.
Right. Managing your energy count, especially against an aggressive deck like Mono Black Zombie, is so important for this Marvel archetype. All right, here we go. He's going to play Etherworks Marvel and give himself the best shot to try to hit something massive here. Now, Mark can hit Ulamog. Of course, he's got that, but he's not running Chandra Flamecaller, right?
No, and in fact, we see a Chandra Torch of Defiance there, which not the same effect as Chandra Flamecaller. I'm sure he wishes that was a slightly more expensive Chandra.
Yeah, that was technology that some of the teams brought. Mark's version is a little bit lower to the ground. It has a little bit more mid-game to it. He's deciding between Chandra and another Harness Lightning.
Nope.
With World of Virtuoso being another potential option, but Taking out Lord of the Accursed has to be a high priority here.
So he's, looks like he may be plussing Chandra here. He's going to use the... Wow, that is actually the 4th Harness Lightning. There's 2 in the graveyard, 1 sitting in the bottom 5 cards of his library, and then the last one. So he has seen all of them at this point, though. He knows one of them's not coming up anytime soon.
Unfortunately for Mark, that Liliana's Mastery is going to allow Gerry to kill the Chandra, where normally, or otherwise, he would not have been able to do so.
Right, and next turn, it's not getting any easier for Mark. Gerry's got the engine running now. He's got a Crypt Breaker in his hand.
And just 12 points of power on the board.
And he can just start rumbling, drawing cards. It really is just up to Gerry Thompson how he wants to approach this, depending on what the board state looks like.
I think we are past the Crypt Breaker drawing extra cards phase and well into the Shambling Horde advances stage.
The slam. Yeah, all right. I'm into it.
It is unfortunate for Gerry that when Mark gets to trade off his creatures in combat or chump with Servant of the Conduit, then the Aetherworks Marvel ticks up Mark's energies count. But as we've seen this before, zombies can get to a point where an Ulamog is not enough to stem the tide. Even the great and powerful Eldrazi still sometimes fall when there are enough endless ranks of the dead.
That's right. I did watch the game I was mentioning earlier between these two that I watched. It was off camera, but it was... Well, part of it was on camera. It was an amazing game. Gerry Thompson moved all in on Westvale Abbey, and he got to hit Mark down to 5. So any hit from the Profane Prince from then on would kill him. And at the time, Mark did have 1 Whirler Virtuoso on the battlefield, and he was able to chain together energy, and then 2 copies of Tireless Tracker, such that he never was down to no Thopters left, and in fact started attacking with huge, like the biggest Tireless Trackers I've ever seen, and he ended up winning that game.
Wow.
Gerry Thompson at one point was above 50 life, and he still beat him. Okay, so the team came in. Mark made a trade, took a bunch of damage, and is now at 4 energy. He still has Aetherworks Marvel at the ready.
And he's going to be able to spin the Marvel this turn if he wants. He's got both Whirler Virtuoso and another Servant of the Conduit. So Mark's still hoping to hit Ulamog, at which point he would actually be in very good shape. Again, this Marvel deck does a very good job of flooding the board. Whirler Virtuoso, Servant of the Conduit, just a lot of cards that end up blocking. We saw Martin Mueller attack Christian Calcano to death with Servants of the Conduit and Tireless Tracker, even after getting hit by multiple copies of Lost Legacy.
Man, I thought he played that game really well. Changed gears almost immediately. Really not what that deck was designed to do, but he made it work. Tobiasch at 7 life.
And Gerry very close to actually summoning Ormondal off of that Westvale Abbey, but
he just need a land.
Not quite there. He's got a land that he's been hiding in hand. Yep. He is 1 creature short this turn.
Yeah, that's right. So a little short on both things.
And there's Ulamog.
Okay, Ulamog has arrived. How big of a swing is this for Mark? This has to be a potentially game-winning play.
Oh, yeah. Ulamog can exile something like Relentless Dead and Liliana's Mastery and then block all the zombie tokens. And all of a sudden, Gerry goes from having a board advantage to having a severe board disadvantage.
Gosh, these Aetherworks Marvel swings are so big. And Mark would like to block now.
Oh, I'm sure he would. These blocks are great for him.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, Gerry Thompson went from a dominating board presence to one that has now been completely devastated off of 1 activation from Aetherworks Marvel. And even with a bit of a slow start from Marc, he is now firmly in the lead to take game 2.
And one of the features of the Aetherworks Marvel deck is the advantage bar gets quite a bit of a workout.
It really does.
And hitting Ulamog, it's almost binary. It's hitting Ulamog versus not hitting Ulamog when someone activates Aetherworks Marvel. We've seen plenty of games where Ulamog is missed and the Marvel player still wins because Whirler Virtuoso, Harness Lightning, Chandra, these are all board-affecting cards. But it is night and day between hitting Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, and not.
It really is. You can see why some of the players brought Chandra Flamecaller to the party. They wanted something else to hit.
Yeah, so there are some games where you'd rather hit Chandra than Ulamog.
Right.
Which is not something that you could be said about basically any card in Marc Tobiasch's deck because he is not playing anything that nearly as high impact as Ulamog, whereas Chandra sometimes actually does have that effect.
Bears. Yep.
Gerry's going to activate his Crypt Breaker on end step. Just get rid of that swamp to make a zombie. All of his plans have really fallen apart on him here. The Westvale Abbey plan is no longer viable. And that whole attacking thing not looking good either.
Yep.
Usually the second hit by Ulamog gets you pretty darn close.
Yeah, Gerry's running out of cassettes there. He's
Indeed.
his record library is getting much, much smaller.
Right. Looks like he's down to 5 or 6 cards there.
Plus. Yep.
Chandra to kill the zombie. Pass the turn back. Marc at a safe 7 life, and this is going to be the last turn of this one. That was Marc Tobiasch taking down game number 2 from Gerry Thompson and evening things up. Now, in our main match,
Yeah, I think so. I think it'll be fun.
things are not evened up. In fact, the game just ended a few moments ago there. That was Ken Yukihiro taking down game 2 from Erik Froelich, and Erik has a tall hill to climb in the post-sideboarded games here. If he is going to advance to the semifinals, he's got to win 3 in a row.
It's been done before, but it is, like you said, an uphill battle.
What are we thinking about sideboarded games as we transition into those, if things get better or worse for Erik, since he is the one who needs to do the majority of the work here?
Looking at the sideboard, I actually don't think Erik gets a ton of really appealing cards. He's not playing against a deck like, say, Zombies, where a Radiant Flames, which Erik does have, is a trump. He does get to tune his deck, and he does get to alternate what exactly threats he wants to possess and how much removal he wants, but it is a little more difficult. Taking a look here at Ken Yukuhiro's sideboard, he does have 2 copies of Dispossess, which is presumably there to name Aetherworks Marvel, and Manglehorn as well, which critically makes Aetherworks Marvel enter the battlefield tapped. Labor of the Heart, another disruptive element. And overall, I mean, I actually think Ken improves more post-board than Erik does, which is good news for Ken. He's already up 2 games, but being able to take out cards like Grasp of Darkness or Fatal Push, or at least cut down on the numbers of those, and bring in more interactive cards against the Erik strategy, it is better than what Erik has going on.
Let's take a look at Erik's sideboard here, Luis, and see what he can bring in to help stem the bleeding. What does he have?
Ether Meltdown and Chandra Flamecaller are both good interactive cards. Ether Meltdown in particular against things like Heart of Kiran. Radiant Flames, like I was mentioning before, great against zombies. The best card in Erik's sideboard against zombies. Not as good against the energy deck, which tends to have slightly larger threats and fewer of them. And then Tireless Tracker is a card you can basically always bring in and have it be at least passable if there's cards Erik doesn't like in his main deck.
Yeah, we'll have to see how he decides to approach this, but boy, does Erik Froelich have a lot of work to do here in his 5th Pro Tour top 8. Ken Yukihiro off to a commanding 2-0 lead, and looking to advance to the semifinals for his team Musashi.
Could have an all Musashi finals here.
It is absolutely possible. Yuya Watanabe has already won his quarterfinal match. That was the prior round here. He defeated Chris Fennell and put himself into the semifinal. He will be facing Martin Mueller, who beat Christian Calcano. Both of them were 3-0. And like you said, if Yuya were to beat Martin, he would be in the finals. And if Ken finds himself in the finals, it could be all Musashi. They have really dominated the team competition thus far and have continued that here. Impressive stuff from the team from Japan. I know Team Channel Fireball Ice is certainly happy to have Eric in the top 8 here as well. They are regarded as one of the more stacked teams as far as players go.
Yeah, all platinums, multiple Hall of Famers, and there are not many teams that could claim to have equal or better skill than that team.
Right.
And regardless of where the team standings are, but
sitting in 7th, but depending on how this finish goes, they could make it up into the top 5.
And remember that the season is 2/3 over after this Pro Tour. There's one more Pro Tour Hour of Devastation in Kyoto, where there could be still big swings. I mean, the pro point payout is because pro points are what the teams are based off of, like what their final standings, and the pro point payout is fairly top heavy with the winner and the second place getting the bulk of the points. So, if a team were to have, say, an all Channel Fireball Ice finals at the next Pro Tour, that could plummet or make them go from 5th to 2nd, for example.
Right. Oh, that was a quick mulligan there for Froelich. He didn't have enough land, so he's just going to go right back and start shuffling. Let's see what Ken's got going on. Nope. Ken's kept his hand.
Curious what Eric's thinking right now.
It's hard to tell with Eric, to be honest.
Well, sometimes it's harder to tell than others. I suspect he was one card off on his mulligan.
Do you think he's happy or sad?
As
an analyst,
as an expert analyst,
yeah.
I'm going to go with not happy.
Yeah, no, and it's hard to blame him, right? Sitting here mulliganing.
I actually have literally been in that position, and it does not feel good.
It feels terrible. Yeah, it really does.
Because making the top 8 at a Pro Tour, I mean, it's awesome.
It's a special
You make top
thing.
8, you get to play on Sunday. Then all of a sudden you find yourself down 2 games, mulliganing, probably scrying to the bottom, and you end up feeling like, this is it, like I'm going to go out like this. And
Did you say probably scrying to the bottom? You just knocked that in.
That's just my personal experience. And so I completely understand where Eric is coming from here.
Yeah, I can hear you, but I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Like, I understand, like, my top 8 is breathing heavy, nothing wrong with that, but it's really loud in my ear. Like, it's getting painful. So I just didn't know if there's a maybe turn it down a little or...
I think Eric's just having a little issue with the headset microphone there.
I think the volume in his headset actually is what he was.
Yes. From the microphone.
I agree with him that breathing, it comes like super loud, and that's...
Feeling extremely heavy, which is fine, but it's just really...
Do you think he wants to hear the commentary?
yeah.
Our pleasant voices would probably help.
They may soothe him.
So it's mine.
I don't think, no.
I'll get some.
Just a little. It doesn't have to be a lot, but it's real loud.
Yeah, I agree with that.
We'll get that adjusted for Eric. He needs to make sure that he can concentrate, of course, as he plays. He, by the way, has found a keeper.
Yeah, his hand does look keepable of 3 lands: Magma Spray, Rogue Refiner, and Whirler Virtuoso.
Wasn't there? They're doing it out back. You can start another time if you wish. Sir? Yes.
All right, and it looks like we're going to be underway here. land for Erik Froelich on turn 1. It is a tap land, but he's got a magma spray in his hand that could come in really handy this game.
Look at Ken Yukihiro's hand. Notice he cast Attune with Ether for that Swamp in hand. Triple Long Tusk Cub and Winding Constrictor along with Rishkar Pima Renegade. So a very good hand from Ken. And if he draws a land in the next 2 turns, he can go turn 2 Winding Constrictor, turn 3 Rishkar Pima Renegade, which that draw is quite strong.
Yeah, this was an interesting decision here. Remember, the Attune with Ether gives him 2 energy so that he does not leave his Long Tusk Cub open to a Magma Spray. And, he is incentivized to having a Long Tusk Cub if he's not going to find another land, right? Because that thing could start connecting sooner.
Definitely, and he did not draw a land for his turn, so had he drawn a land, he would have been, I think, more prone to play the Winding Constrictor, but I like the sequencing he has done here. And the second Attune, things are really humming for Ken because now that Long Tusk Cub can attack past a Rogue Refiner.
Wow, already?
And the Mondo combo here, when that Long Tusk Cub hits, because of Winding Constrictor, Ken gets 3 energy, and for each 2 energy that Ken removes, the Long Tusk Cub gets 2 ++1 counters. And this is putting Eric in a really tough spot because if Eric wants to block with Rogue Refiner, he can force Ken to use energy before getting those counters, but he's just gonna take the 6 here.
Wow, things get out of hand so quickly with that Winding Constrictor, don't they?
It's a 6/6 Long Tusk Cub on turn 3.
Attacking right now. Froelich found an Ether Meltdown off the top of his library there.
Generally a good answer to Ken's threats, but not going to keep that Long Tusk Cub at bay.
Yeah. It's been a rough quarters here for Erik Froelich, and things have gone quite well for Ken Yukihiro, and he could be closing in on a quick 3-0 victory over the Hall of Famer.
And Eric not able to find a Aetherworks Marvel yet, so that's one of those ways to come back from such a fast start.
Yeah, Eric is on a mulligan here. Things don't always fall perfectly into place. And is Eric going to have to use the meltdown here? Yeah, he is.
He definitely has to because he's going to tap out the next couple turns. And wow,
I mean, defense from Ken Yukihiro.
That makes that Long Tusk Cub hit for 10.
Eric's going to be at 4 life,
facing down 2 lethal Long Tusk Cubs. That the little Long Tusk Cub is a virtual 6/6.
Wow. Ken Yukihiro really showing off some of the power level of this aggressive deck, able to create huge creatures.
An incredible draw by Ken Yukihiro here.
Yeah, I mean, all told, Eric has had playable cards here, and the mana to cast them, they just have not been up to the task.
Eric had Magma Spray open on turns 1 and 2, Rogue Refiner into Ether Meltdown into Warlord Virtuoso, and game does not look particularly close.
No, it really doesn't. Here's a Walking Ballista, which can easily clear away blockers. Remember, it's going to get an additional counter thanks to the Constrictor as well. This makes Thopters not as great of an option. You see Ken playing it pre-combat, and he's just going to attack with all 3 creatures. Make a Thopter kill it. Ken beat him to the punch there. So Froelich's going to trade all of his energy for effectively the Walking Ballista, as Ken immediately kills both Thopters.
Eric did have the option to Magma Spray the Walking Ballista before making any Thopters, but then it would have just taken out the Rogue Refiner, and either way, Eric's forced to just make a bunch of chump blocks this turn and get to a point where he just can't come back the next turn.
Right. That's the problem, is that, normally you'd be thinking in terms of Aetherworks Marvel, but now with no energy, that's not going to be an option for Froelich. And we could see a second Team Musashi player advance to the semis here in just a moment. Erik Froelich effectively on 0 outs here.
He doesn't have any energy. He doesn't have Aetherworks Marvel. He's facing down 4 lethal threats.
And that's going to do it. Erik Froelich extends the hand, and that's Ken Yukihiro from Japan advancing past Erik Froelich and into the semifinals. He, of course, will be playing the winner of our other match here, Marc Tobiasch versus Gerry Thompson.
Said thumbs up like great hand.
Yeah, I was like, can't win.
Why would he thumbs up you if you couldn't win?
You was looking at you.
Thanks for showing.
Okay, guys.
See, the players are chatting, but looks like we're ready.
Go.
All right, and we are underway here.
Yeah, trying something new.
Let's try.
This is game 3 between these two players. And Gerry Thompson jokingly says, I'm trying something new, different one drop this time. Dreadwander.
Not one he's unhappy about either.
No, this one hits harder.
Well, it's going to try to.
Uh-oh. is he
Fortunately for Gerry, Magma Spray is going to put an early end to that Dreadwander. And the Exile Clause on Magma Spray is why it's one of the most impactful cards.
an early and permanent end to the Wandering. So a follow-up play of Metallic Mimic could set up some pretty nice stuff here for Gerry Thompson, assuming that he's got more action, though. I just caught a quick peek over at Mark's hand, and he's got a pair of Harness Lightning. He has drawn a lot of those. Oh, but look at this. Shielded Ether Thief now for Mark.
Huh? A nice defensive option against zombies. It deals with a 2-power creature while generating energy for Mark, and even gives him a way to spend energy if he's running short on marvels.
These two are funny, by the way. They kind of tease each other as they go.
No blocks. Take 2.
All right, you may not block, says Gerry Thompson. He was deciding whether he wanted to use Grasp of Darkness on it or not. And he decided, you know, I am going to just go ahead and get in for the damage. I've got a follow-up 1-drop anyway, and this is a fine way to use my mana. So Shielded Ether Thief down. No energy or blocks there for Mark. And you see the main phase here, Harness Lightning. And that's an Evolving Wilds as well for Mark. You see the players are playing nice and crisply here. We do appreciate that.
One card and done.
So,
One card, nothing left to do for the turn, says Gerry Thompson, but he did play a Relentless Dead, and it has a +1/+1 counter on it.
yeah, he's doing reasonably well, considering
Yeah.
he did looks like he mulliganed this game, and has one more land than he would want. But Mark's suite of interaction here is also making it so Mark isn't falling too far behind, despite Gerry playing 1 to 2 spells every turn.
Yes.
Tune with Ether from Mark.
The good thing for Gerry is that Mark doesn't have a great answer to Relentless Dead. It's out of Magma Spray range, and Mark doesn't even have a Magma Spray to deal with it. And Relentless Dead is the kind of card you want when you get into an attrition battle, especially when you're have a few too many lands, and Jerry's just able to sit there with mana untapped to bring back Relentless Dead and potentially bring back that Crypt Breaker. This is the turn where Liliana's Mastery would have been a Windmill Slam. Yeah, we're going to see that Metallic Mimic go down.
Mark's going to fall to 13. But he is managing this board state quite nicely. What does Gerry have? Crypt Breaker go. Well, we've kind of entered that middle stage of the game here, Luis. How are you seeing things?
Well, Mark has Chandra Torch of Defiance. He can pick off Crypt Breaker, but then Chandra falls to Relentless Dead. The Relentless Dead living up to its name here. Chandra can't even take out Relentless Dead with any profit because it would go back to Jerry's hand and bring back a Crypt Breaker on its way out. So, Marc, not too thrilled about this situation. Gerry has done a good job of presenting resilient threats here.
Servant of the Conduit, and there's also Chandra.
So what this does is it lets Marc have Chandra survive until next turn, at which point he can +1 exile the top card, just get access to more cards. Though Gerry drew a very good draw. Dark Salvation, he can go land, make 2 zombies, kill your Servant of the Conduit, and then he has 4 zombies in play. He can keep the 2 zombies plus the Crypt Breaker back to draw a card off Crypt Breaker if you'd like, and then attack Chandra with the Relentless Dead.
Wow, that had to be one of the better draws for Gerry Thompson.
Oh,
there.
definitely. And that puts Gerry firmly in the lead. Foil zombie tokens critical to his success.
He did say that they're lucky.
But now Gerry's drawing an extra card at the end of this turn and has a massive horde of zombies that grows bigger by the minute.
Marc's got a Rogue Refiner.
Though remember, Marc is playing Aetherworks Marvel, and with 10 energy out, Ulamog could always come down once Marc finds an Aetherworks Marvel itself.
Yeah, I think he's kind of digging for one here with that Refiner, though he hasn't been able to find one as of yet. It's just down to a couple of lands in hand. Played one, has one left. Land off the top there for Thompson.
And it looked like a Lord of the Accursed.
Yeah.
So if Rogue Refiner blocks a zombie token, Gerry attacks in for 9. Could also block the Crypt Breaker, take the full 10. So either way, not quite lethal. Though pretty good chance that Gerry would like to make sure that Relentless Dead heads over to Chandra, just to ensure that Marc gets as few looks as possible for Aetherworks Marvel, or something like Chandra Flamecaller, which he does have one in his sideboard.
The Menace ability from Relentless Dead paying dividends here for Thompson. One of its many abilities.
The dance between what to attack with when you have Crypt Breaker and what to leave back to draw cards with is always intricate, but I guess that we're done with dancing for the time being.
Yeah. Marc can block the Rogue Refiner on the Crypt Breaker here, but he would take 6 damage and lose Chandra, which is what's going to happen. So you got to say that Gerry Thompson's moving things nicely ahead in his game plan, especially given the fact that Marc has yet to be able to find his signature card, the Aetherworks Marvel.
Chandra Flamecaller, Aetherworks Marvel, these are the kinds of things that Marc needs to draw on.
He found it?
Harness Landing's
in there, Luis. What
not going to do it. He can take out Lord of the Accursed, and he still just takes 7 from the rest of the attackers.
Yeah, that's going to be game. And scoop him up. Gerry Thompson up 2-1 over Marc Tobiasch. That was an impressive game from Gerry. Just kind of kept things right in the middle, kept trucking along, and before he knew it, he had the victory. Now, we are in the sideboarded games here. So why don't we take a look at our players' sideboards to start with Marc here and see what he's going to have brought in.
So the only sweeper he has in his sideboard is Chandra Flamecaller, which, though she is very effective, but multiple Incendiary Flows and a Magma Spray. So Marc overloading on the exile effects, trying to go after those Dread Wanderers and Relentless Deads, plus any other zombie that gets in his way. So he's got some good interaction there that Gerry's going to have to deal with, even though Gerry's pretty glad that Marc does not have Sweltering Suns or Radiant Flames.
What about for Gerry?
Gerry has some Transgress the Minds and Lost Legacy. So again, hand disruption. We're seeing some swaps of removal. Gerry's not fully going to be out of removal. We saw him leave in Grasp of Darkness and cast it to good effect that game, but some number of Transgress and Lost Legacy are going to want to come in just so he can snipe an Aetherworks Marvel with Transgress or exile all of Mark's Ulamogs with Lost Legacy. Though we saw Christian Calcano exile Chandra's on turn 3 and Ulamogs on turn 4 with Lost Legacy and still lose that game to Martin.
Yeah, Martin switched gears and just started attacking him.
The rest of Gerry's sideboard fairly poised against aggro in the mirror. Liliana Lost Hope and Aethersphere Harvester. All good tools in those matchups.
Gonti's a sweet one.
Gonti is a sweet one. Vintage playable even, I've heard.
Oh, I'll take your word for that.
Sniping your opponent's best card out of their top 4 and leaving a very relevant 2/3 Death Touch body in play.
Yeah.
That game was a good example of how resilient the Zombies deck can be. Mark had turn 1 Magma Spray, turn 2 Shielded Ether Thief, Harness Lightning, Chandra, and still ended up very far behind where he still needed to hit Marvel into Ulamog or Chandra Flamecaller, like one of these big massive sweeper effects, because Gerry was able to just keep putting threats into play. Has a Relentless Dead, which is very hard to deal with most removal spells, though. Mark does have 2 copies of Incendiary Flow in his sideboard that are almost purely for cards like Relentless Dead.
Got a shot of the trophy there. That trophy travels with us on the Pro Tour, and every Pro Tour champion ever has their name on it. There's a small placard there with everybody's name on it, and then when you win, you get the top. That's your trophy. I checked. Your name's on there.
So when you win and get the top, do you have to give the top back for the next one, or
No, you get to keep it.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not all you get for winning the Pro Tour, by the way. Get a bunch of money, a bunch of pro points, and of course, you if you're playing for one of these teams, you help put them in a good position. We've got Team Eureka and Team Mutiny facing off here from that perspective. Team Eureka has been one of the premier European-based teams for a while now.
Team Mutiny being one of the premier pirate-based teams for quite some time.
This is funny. Tim Willoughby told us that if Gerry was going to win that game, he was going to flip over his tokens. Those zombie tokens are double-sided. And apparently one side has hats on or something. And he has, in fact, flipped them over. I suppose he's working all the angles, maximizing luck or what.
I see swamps and crypt breakers. What else do you need?
Not much. There's a Dark Salvation there as well. Okay, and we are underway here in game number 4. Gerry Thompson up 2-1 over Marc Tobiasch from Germany. And Mark has an Evolving Wilds to kick things off. Gerry Thompson has Swamp into Crypt Breaker.
It's one of the most important cards on the zombie deck. Builds up your board, makes a bunch of zombies, but critically draws you extra cards and makes it so zombies is not just a 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop hope that's enough deck. It's a deck that can do that, but while also presenting threats in the mid to late game.
Looks like Incendiary Flow there from Mark to take down that first Crypt Breaker. And looks like Gerry has drawn himself a Metallic Mimic. He's going to use up his mana on turn 2 to cast that. On the other side, Mark does hit his land drop.
And Mark, well on pace, he's got an Aetherworks Marvel he actually just drew.
Ooh.
So if he can generate a few more energy, which it looks like he can, his hand is capable of doing so. Take a look at that. You've got Servant of the Conduit, Aetherworks Marvel, and land. So this is a game that's going to come down to how Aetherworks Marvel ends up presenting.
Now, generally speaking, he wants to get that Aetherworks Marvel out of his hand, since Gerry doesn't have answers for it once it's on the battlefield, right?
Correct, and Gerry does have Transgress the Mind, which can disrupt it while it's still in Tobiash's hand.
Lost Legacy, potentially.
Wow.
All right, Gerry aggressively here. He recognizes the threat of an Aetherworks Marvel next turn, and he is going to use Dark Salvation. Just pay black mana, not even make a zombie off of it. And I like that play a lot from Gerry. There's the Aetherworks Marvel, but as you see, Marc's sitting there on 3 energy.
And Marc has served on the conduit to go to 5 energy, but not quite 6.
Kind of tough to do nothing when it is.
And Gerry now has to figure out how to quickly dispatch Marc before Marc gets a spin off that Aetherworks Marvel.
Looks like Gerry's going to make a zombie token using his Crypt Breaker, discarding a swamp.
And does the die represent a hat or a +1/+1 counter?
This is interesting. Gerry's deciding whether he'd like to draw a card or start attacking, and it seems to be a very close decision for him here.
Well, Gerry also has a Dread Wanderer in hand, but unfortunately it enters the battlefield tapped, so he doesn't get value out of playing it, but he found a way around that.
He certainly did.
And you can just go.
And he's just going to pass the turn. You can see this line of play often from the zombie players. They will build up their board and take advantage of Crypt Breaker activations while they have them available, and then start hitting for huge amounts of damage. Once again, we outlined this last turn, Luis. Oh, but look at this.
Yep.
Evolving Wilds is going to get him an energy thanks to Aetherworks Marvel. And we are going to have an active Aetherworks Marvel versus a horde of zombies, which is kind of a snapshot of this Pro Tour, isn't it?
All right, we'll see, because we are in a position where Gerry actually has a severe advantage here if that Marvel misses. So we're going to see what happens pending a Marvel hit.
He says no Ulamog,
And there was no Ulamog.
and he got what he wanted. Disappointment there for Marc. So now he has to look at his other options and see if he can get out of this mess, because Gerry is tantalizingly close to advancing to the semifinals.
Despite
with dominant board presence here.
having not dealt any damage yet to Marc.
No, he hasn't. He's been more patient with it. Remember, he still got a card draw going.
Yeah, and Crypt Breaker is ensuring that Gerry, basically by attacking, Gerry could present a clock of 2 or 3 turns, something like three-ish turns. By not attacking, Gerry's clock, it might get started later, but it will be a shorter clock because
Right.
Gerry will have a massive board presence by the time he does attack.
And here he is drawing a card on end step. He finds a Relentless Dead.
And what Gerry wants to do is make it so even if Marc does hit an Ulamog, Gerry can still win through it, because Jerry's getting to that point.
He is.
In fact, with Relentless Dead plus Grasp of Darkness, we might be seeing a situation where Marc can hit Ulamog off of Aetherworks Marvel and still end up losing to Gerry's board.
God. When you read Ulamog, it's hard to imagine those scenarios, but when you see what this mono black zombies deck is capable of doing, it makes so much more sense. They just go so wide, but they also go tall. They've got numerous ways to add +1/+1 counters and buff up their zombies. Grasp of Darkness here from Gerry Thompson. He's going to use it on the Rogue Refiner. And once again, we're going to see Gerry take the aggressive line here, simply tapping a mana to kill a creature on the other side and send in a massive attack. It's 12 damage. Marc's going to fall down to 8, and he's got to find something to get out of this. He found Whirler Virtuoso off the top of his library.
He's going to get to activate Aetherworks Marvel once again.
The question is, has Gerry put himself in that position that we talked about, where even if he hits Ulamog, is it too late for Marc? It seems close.
It's close. We're not quite there. If Ulamog does hit off Marvel, then it can exile 2 of Gerry's attackers, block a 3rd, and Gerry does not have quite lethal, especially if Marc has, a Whirler Virtuoso and potentially even a Thopter.
Just spin, outcast. Put an Ulamog on top or no?
I don't know.
Chapter maybe.
strategic discussion there.
Chandra Flamecaller also counts as a hit here, by the way. She might actually be better. She would wipe Jerry's entire board.
Yeah, and that means that Marc is going to need to activate that right now. Let's see what he can hit. This could be the game changer. He did hit Chandra, but it was not the one he wanted.
But
he did hit the big boy, though. Ulamog, Ceaseless Hunger, and boom. Advantage bar jumps to the left as Gerry didn't quite get critical mass, at least not yet, to power through the Ulamog. Is there anything Gerry can do here? He tried to be as aggressive as possible. This one may have slipped away from him, though.
At this point, Gerry needs to play that Relentless Dead, and if he had drawn like another copy of Relentless Dead and maybe followed it up with a Lord of the Accursed, he would have a good shot. But it's going to be hard because that Whirler Virtuoso does a very good job of flooding the board with Thopters.
Dreadwanderer comes back after the Relentless Dead as he passes a turn back.
On the other hand, Marc missing on his draw step, having all lands in hand. If he's in a position where he can't attack with Ulamog, then his advantage is in fact lessened.
He just played a land and passed the turn back to Gerry. What does Gerry find? Was it a Lord of the Accursed? It was.
So Lord of the Accursed. Marc has 3 blockers because remember he can make a Thopter with Whirler Virtuoso.
Look at this.
Gerry has 5 attackers, 2 get through.
Can he just set up a win next turn using Lord of the Cursed ability? No, he's going to attack right now. Marc is going to make a Thopter. Can he survive this?
He can survive. He's gonna take something like 6 or 7 damage.
That's 6.
Well, he can't block Metallic Mimic. Because otherwise, if he blocks Metallic Mimic, he lets a 4-power creature through. So he has to take 7 damage, fall to 1 here.
Right. Yeah, that would be way more. That would be 8 damage.
And then
This puts him to
it's
1?
actually the onus is now on Marc to draw something. That Lord of the Accursed was a huge swing.
Wow. Yeah, you said that. If he had drawn that plus another threat, well, he had a threat in his graveyard and then did actually draw Lord of the Accursed. And all of a sudden, it has swung favorably for Gerry Thompson to win his 3rd game and advance to the semis.
And that'll do
Marc
it.
just bricked. He didn't find anything. And that's Gerry Thompson winning the match and advancing to the semifinal. He will be facing off against Ken Yukihiro from Japan in the semifinals. Congratulations, Gerry Thompson. Fantastic work, by the way, to you two as well, Marc. And that was a fun match to watch for sure.
Definitely.
Ooh, swingy. My goodness sakes. So that's how it's been, though, as we've been watching these matches go down. Welcome back to the booth here in Nashville. You know, Aetherworks Marvel, so much can hang on just one activation of that card. Spin the wheel, as it were. And we've got more of that coming up for you, of course, as we work our way towards the semifinals. Before we get to that, though, we'll be back after these messages.
Hello and welcome back to the news desk. Another quarterfinals in the books. Our very own Brian David Marshall is down on the floor with Gerry Thompson.
Thanks, Maria. I'm here with Gerry Thompson. Gerry, one better than the last time you made the top 8, which was a little while ago.
Yes, and so far so good. Doing better than the last time is certainly nice. And you said it was a while ago, but I played at like 40 Pro Tours, and that was 32, and this is 40 something. So like we're closing the gap, you know. So it doesn't feel that long.
Now, looked like a pretty convincing argument for playing zombies in a field full of Marvel.
There's no fail rate on grizzly bears. That's kind of the joke with my opponent, where, you know, his deck does his thing. He's very consistent, but sometimes like it just doesn't all come together. And even if you do, if the Ulamog comes a little bit too late, sometimes it's not enough, you know. And zombies just does their thing every time, and there's kind of no stopping them.
Now, I have to give you some props here for, you know, rocking the foil zombie tokens.
Oh, yeah.
I really appreciated your attention to detail there.
When you're playing 22 basic swamps, you need to bling it out a little bit, right? So yeah, the foil tokens are awesome. I love them.
Who's watching at home? Anyone you want to say hello to today?
Isabel Hayes, my wonderful girlfriend. Once I found out I made top 8, I tried to like swing it so like I could fly her in, have her be here. Didn't quite work out, unfortunately, but I'll be home soon.
All right. Hey, Isabel. Long time no see. Sending it back to the news desk and Maria Bartholdi.
Thanks so much, BDM. The power of grizzly bears indeed. Well, let's take a second. I've got Ian Duke here at the news desk with me to go through what we saw this morning. So let's take a look at our bracket and walk us through kind of what's happened so far today. Our first quarterfinal matchup, we had Chris Fennell playing White-Black Zombies, Yuya Watanabe. Ian Duke, you were in the booth for this. Give us a rundown on what happened.
I mean, these were awesome games, a lot of back and forth, you know, where one player looked like they were far ahead, and then, you know, one Aetherworks Marvel activation or a lucky top deck sent things spinning the other way. Ultimately, it was Yuya Watanabe that triumphed 3-0 over Chris Fennell, but a lot of awesome back and forth along the way.
All right, moving on to our second quarterfinals, we saw Christian Calcano piloting Mono Black Zombies versus Martin Mueller, Teamer Aetherworks Marvel. Ian, break this one down for us.
This was also a really cool match, also Zombies versus Marvel, but different flavors of both decks, and it's really interesting seeing those nuances. It was awesome to be in the booth for that and see both of these matchups play out in parallel. There was one particularly awesome game, Game 3, so the first post-sideboard game, where Christian Calcano actually resolved 2 copies of Lost Legacy, stripping out both Ulamog and Chandra Flamecaller from Martin Mueller's library, which left him kind of just improvising this hack-together plan of playing some creatures, Tireless Tracker and Rogue Refiner, and it looked like for a long time things were vastly in Christian Calcano's favor, but a lucky top deck of, or rather an Aetherworks Marvel activation into Sweltering Suns was able to sweep away Christian Calcano's board and actually turn that game around, leading to, again, a 3-0 sweep for the Marvel deck on the part of Martin Mueller.
That just shows kind of the resilience of Marvel, that even when you take some of its best pieces away, it's still able to win.
Very true.
All right, let's move on. We had Marc Tobiasch playing another Marvel deck, as well as Gerry Thompson, who we just heard down on the floor, Mono Black Zombies. How did this one shake out? You weren't in the booth for this one, Ian.
Yeah, very true. Ultimately, though, Gerry Thompson was able to triumph in this match. I think it was a 3-1 victory.
It was.
Is that correct? So congratulations to Gerry Thompson, moving on and representing the zombie hordes in the semifinals.
Ken Yukihiro and Erik Froelich was our other quarterfinals here. Eric, of course, on Marvel as well. Ken Yukihiro on a bit of a dark horse here, black-green energy.
Yeah, black-green was a deck that was popular, you know, in previous standard seasons, but really not popular, not well represented here at the Pro Tour. Ken Yukihiro, you know, one of the few black-green players that did make it up to the top tables and is here in the top 8. This match was a relatively quick sweep, 3-0 in favor of Ken Yukihiro. So he will be moving on with his black-green energy deck. We saw some awesome beatdowns from Long Tossed Cub in a couple of those games there, and a key blossoming defense, really putting the pressure on Erik Froelich.
All right, so stay tuned. Our semifinals will be coming up in just a little bit. But first, for many Magic players, the members of Wizards of the Coast R&D, that's you, Ian, are all-powerful beings crafting the sets that define the game for months at a time. So how does an all-powerful being design a god? Our very own Rich Hagen sat down to find out what went into the creation of the Amonkhet gods, trials, and more.
Trials, exert, counters, monuments, cycling. And that's just the tip of the pyramid. Amonkhet is full of awesome.
Oketra the True is Amonkhet's white-aligned, cat-headed god of solidarity. She oversees the training of all of these initiates. People in Amonkhet train their entire lives for the trials, and she sees them through this first stage of their lives, helping them to be ready for the tests to come.
One of the things is we definitely played around with Indestructible again, because we did Indestructible in the Gods and Theros. We had a little sneaky thing here, which was we were using -1/-1 counters, which actually are a good answer to indestructibility. So we actually sort of did indestructibility knowing that the environment we were doing, it was a little easier to deal with them than normal.
When we were deciding our lineup of gods here, we knew that we wanted to draw from the notion of animal-headed gods. And so Kefnet, just like Oketra was a cat-headed god, Kefnet is an ibis-headed god. And Kefnet the Mindful is the god of knowledge. He is the curator of information on Amonkhet. And he draws power from the Luxa River. And with that power, he's able to bolster the protection effects of this barrier called the Hekma that keeps the entire city safe from the horrors of the outside world.
Bantu the Glorified is the black-aligned, crocodile-headed god of ambition. Up to the point where they reach the Trial of Ambition, the initiates have all been moving through the process in these groups called crops. Once they reach the Trial of Ambition, they go in as a crop, but this is where they're forced to turn on one another. Bantu's job is to test that they are loyal to their own glory and to the god Pharaoh, not to one another.
Ronus the Indomitable is the snake-headed god of strength, and the idea that snakes are basically all muscle, and we thought that was an interesting way to bring a different kind of take on the god of strength. And so Ronos is the one that believes that in order to get to the afterlife, you have to be able to endure the trials to get there. And the mind has to be ready, your spirit has to be filled with zeal, but your body also has to be physically strong.
Hazaret the Fervent is the red-aligned, jackal-headed god of zeal. She oversees the final trial. As the initiates fight their way to the top, the very worthiest meet her in person. She takes her two-pronged spear, which kind of looks like Bolas's horns, and stabs them, one prong through the head and one through the heart, guaranteeing them a spot in the afterlife beside the god Pharaoh.
Early in the design, the structure of the set was very undefined. We needed some sort of element to use as a scaffolding to kind of bring it all together. In Ravnica, you have the 10 guilds, and they provide a huge amount of structure. We wanted a little something similar here to kind of hang everything off of. So we decided that there would be 5 gods, 5 monuments, 5 trials where the worthy are judged, and 5 cartouches, which is the sort of medal that you get when you have overcome a trial. And we wanted all of the trials and cartouches and monuments and gods of one color to suggest a certain strategy and to play together in a satisfying way. And in fact, the trials and the cartouches have an explicit mechanical interaction where one of them allows you to reuse the other one.
As someone who's been playing the game a long time, little quests for draft, like trials and cartouches, are the kind of things that make me excited to draft the set over and over again. I just want to try and, in all the color combinations, combine all the different cartouches and trials to see what kind of amazing value I can get.
Very first day, we wrote the list on the board. One of the things we wrote down was monuments. Because if you think of Egypt, you think of, of pyramids and the Sphinx. And they spent a lot of time building things. And so one of the things we had to figure out is, how do we capture that aspect of it? Remember, we were sunny Egypt, not dusty ancient Egypt. We were sunny Egypt. And so this is not you finding things that have since broken down. This is you watching things being built. And so we wanted to figure out some way to represent this idea of building. We wanted to capture all the different aspects of Egypt, and hey, building the pyramids, building the monuments, building those things we thought was important. So we made some cards. We made a cycle or two to sort of match that feel.
So there's kind of 2 types of monuments that exist in this set. There's the big, grand spectacles of the monuments to the gods that were very much from this place that they were from a creative place in our storytelling of where these trials take place. Then there were the monuments that were trying to capture the much more tropey ancient Egypt concept of monuments that you build as a player, where you're adding on these counters until they are finally done, and they are beautiful and perfect, and you get to build your own pyramid or whatever it is.
It's one of my favorite things about Magic is the idea that it's not just a black and white world, a system of good versus evil. And so when you have to think about entire systems and belief systems that have a game function of reflecting the colors of Magic, it really forces the creative team to do just that, to get creative about what does this mean for green, what does this mean for blue, what does this mean for red, what does it mean in the context of a city built to do this thing. I mean, I have a history background, so this is my favorite part of the whole process. My favorite part of the job is creating not just belief systems, but social constructs that feel real.
One of the first decisions we made, actually, in Amonkhet was to use -1/-1 counters. Now, those people that know that we only use one counter per block, that we want, if there's a creature with a counter on it, we want you to be able to figure out what it is. And so normally that's a +1/+1 counter. But we wanted to do a world that was kind of, look, it's Bolas's world. It's a harsh, rough world, where we feel like -1 counters did a really good job of getting that feel.
-1/-1 counters came from sort of the notion that this is a world where life is very hard, and it is very much Bolas's home world has this cruelty to it that -1/-1 counters tend to sort of engender, where things are getting pulled down more often than they're getting pumped up. And mechanically, it is very different, because there's so much temptation to make designs that add on those counters, make things a little bit better. And you have this world where the rules for us designing it become very different, because no, it is about knocking your opponent's stuff down instead.
In Magic, combat naturally favors the defender. Defenders can wait to see what the attacker is doing before they make their blocks, they can double block, they have all these natural advantages. So it's always great to see mechanics that help you out specifically when you're attacking. Exert naturally helps you make attacks that get through tough blocking situations to keep attacking even when the opponent has their guard up.
The Exert mechanic in many ways was trying to fulfill a role of helping you continue to progress during a game in terms of combat. Whether it's constructed or limited, often there are situations where it's like, yeah, you have a bigger creature than me, I can't attack again next turn. Exert's mostly situated to try to let you feel like you can still make smart attacks. Sometimes that's just making your creature big enough to attack, and then the drawback to that is that you don't get to untap that creature on the next turn unless you have some silly trick, which we've given you some of. But it's really letting you, it's not trying to complicate the decisions that you're making each turn. It's just, well, I wouldn't have been able to attack, now I can't attack. I feel good about this, or sometimes it's like exert, draw a card. So, well, even if you're killing off my creature, I'm gonna get a card out of this. Maybe I'll draw something else that is gonna help me out of this situation.
So the player has to decide: is now the right time to exert, knowing that they're going to have to wait a full turn before they get to revisit that choice or not. So it's a big decision, and deciding if you want to exert your creatures all on the same turn or on alternating turns. It creates a lot of different gameplay opportunities.
The one I played the most was Combat Celebrant. But the interesting thing about that is the card, even though it didn't change, had, during development, 4 different names. And so the card mechanics stayed exactly the same, but you had 4 different names but that's not unusual. Creative oftentimes iterates a lot in terms of coming up with different names to evoke the flavor of the set. But it's interesting that you have one of the more powerful Exert guys to be exactly what he was from the beginning of development to all the way to the end.
So one of the big things is coming off of Kaladesh. Kaladesh had a very particular feel. It was very, you're an inventor, and we made things go together, and it was very orderly. So one of the things is the pendulum is swinging. Now in Amonkhet, there's lots of different places to go. They're not all interconnected, It's connected by feel, not by sort of, natural synergy. And so we had a lot of different places to explore. And one of the things about Amonkhet is, You know, we're doing mummies, and we're doing monuments, and we're doing gods, and we're doing deserts, and we're hitting all these different things you expect that are going in all sorts of different places. But one of the neat things about it is, it just is a very different experience. You know, you're going to get to explore the world of Amonkhet, much like the Gatewatch. When they show up, there's just a million different things here, a million different ways to go. You get to explore all of them.